walk you through how he lost 60, or how you can lose 60 pounds in 60 days. Initially, in the beginning of the first semester, we were talking, and he was like, okay, I'm going to have this aim of losing this much weight, and I was like, there's no way you're going to do it in CMU. But then, at the end of the semester, everybody could see that the man has worked his magic. And I was like, there's got to be a talk so that everybody can know what kind of tricks and techniques that you used to, because I know that people needs that. Without delaying, let me welcome Tewodros.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Students, guests, everyone, thank you so much for coming. Gideon, I want to thank you for organizing this event today. When we first talked about it, I think we said if we have 2 people in the room, we're good. And I'm glad all of you came. So, so I'm going to talk about, my presentation is going to be about how to lose weight in 60 days, 60 pounds in 60 days. While the results will vary, I'm going to talk about a less time-intensive, less painful way of losing weight. You know, CME students are really busy, so this should work for you guys pretty well. Slight disclaimer. You're gonna have to read this afterwards. But I am not a medical expert. No, I don't think I have any family members who have medical experience. So, yeah, the student body is not responsible for what happens if you actually follow the tips that I'm going to give today. Just a disclaimer. So, why do you actually need to lose weight? Why do people say lose weight? To look good? Health benefit? To fit in a dress better? Not all genders, but
to be specific, graduation dress.
Graduation dress. Okay. Well, according to a paper from 2017 on morbidity and mortality and its relation to obesity, what they found was researchers found that obesity actually causes a lot of morbidity or like diseases on humans, and it also decreases life expectancy. And an accurate assessment of obesity is important because it actually lets you know what diseases are you likely to encounter if your weight is too high. So, these are different stages of obesity. And if you're stage 0, you're not actually obese. You could be healthy or overweight. And these are the different types of diseases that you could have. And as you can see, as you go on and become more obese, you're more likely to have terminal diseases or actually long-term diseases which don't have solutions. So you might actually be thinking to yourself, obesity, what does that have to do with Africa? Like, why do we concern ourselves about obesity in Africa? Well, one thing you should notice is that the global fast food market has steadily been growing over the past decade, okay? And it's actually going to reach $650 billion by 2020. Over the same time period, you can see that the continents or the regions that are mostly affected are Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East. So it is actually a big concern for Africans, and you can actually see that the compound annual growth rate for fast food companies is 7.6 in those countries, which is the highest among all throughout the world. Another example of this is specifically on the African continent is Ghana, where you can see being overweight or obesity has steadily increased over the past decades, and this is a research that was done by BMC Public Health in 2016, and there's a lot of concern about the future of Africans. If you're not obese in the audience, if you're not obese, you're likely to have someone who's who is a family member that's obese, or who is a friend that's obese, or if you're obese right now, you're actually from the future. Uh, you're you're likely to be obese in the future. So one thing you'll notice is that there's a lot of content on how to lose weight. These are just books from 2019 on weight loss strategies. So why create another presentation just about weight loss if there's all this content that's available? Well, there's two reasons why we want to do this. First is context. We want a solution that works for Africa, that is affordable, that you can do in a short period of time, and that that you can easily practice. The second thing is, some of you noticed that I lost a lot of weight, and I don't want you to think that I'm dying, so that's why I created the presentation. So why don't people actually lose weight? Well, there's a research on weight stigmatization and bias, and it says that there's actually a lot of bias to people who are overweight. So I sound like a millennial, but it's a problem. This research was from 2007, and when people were asked, what would you like other people to know, when obese people were asked, what would you like other people to know, their number one reason was it was very difficult to lose weight. And the research also showed that overweight people actually experimented with lots of different diets and fasts and exercise, but were not successful. So here are my personal results. This is from February 1st. I was 110 kilograms. This is from day 31. I lost about 12 kilograms. And this is day 60. I lost about 21 kilograms. So these are the first 2 months. I try to take readings every, scale every week. That's about it. So, what is your weight? What do people talk about? What do people mean when they say you need to lose weight, right? Well, your body composition is actually made up of a lot of different things. It's made up of bones. It's made up of soft tissue such as body fat, and it's made up of lean body mass such as muscles and organs, internal organs, your hair, water inside your body, arteries, etc. Now, you do not want to lose bones, or you don't want to lose lean body mass. Although you could do so, you could chop off your legs and lose weight, but that's not what they mean. What they actually mean is you need to lose body fat. That's what doctors mean. So, how do you actually use your weight? So you know your weight. What do you use it for? Well, you actually all know what BMI is. It's the body mass index. There's 5 different categories in the body mass index. So you can either be underweight, healthy, obese, overweight, or extremely obese. The solution I'm going to give you today works best for people who are in the blue and the red areas, which is the overweight and the obese or extremely obese. That solution works best for them. You can quickly see find out what your BMI is, or you can use the slides later and find out what it is. When I started, my BMI was 36, and anyone that's over 35, that has a BMI of 35 or over, is considered at risk of one of those diseases that I showed you earlier. And there's all these other factors that you should consider when you talk about BMI. If you're a highly muscular person, you could still have a weight that's pretty high, but if your BMI is 35 or over, that's not an excuse. If you're pregnant and you have a BMI of 36 or 35 or above, it's still pretty bad. Right now, my BMI is 28, so I've crossed into the next group, and I, maybe in a few years I continue. Now, the next thing you want to consider is actually body fat. You can measure body fat from two things. You can use your BMI and you can use a tape measure, and there are certain formulas you can use online, and it gives you the results. And you can classify which one of these states you're in. So this was organized by the American Council of Exercise, and it's the most commonly used chart. As you can see, women have a higher fat percentage than men, and a lot of books and a lot of research says because of that, women have more fat and it's harder to lose. And that's not true, because the fat percentage is actually related to sexual organs, hormones, and ovulation, and it's not related to your body fat, basically. So now I'd like to ask you, where does the weight go? Let's say you lose 10 kilograms. Where does it go? And I need answers from the audience. Toilet? Do I hear anything else from toilet? Okay. Anybody else? No? So the second answer is actually pretty true. There's different types of fats in your body, but the average fat is C55H104O6. I am pretty bad at chemistry. I barely survived in high school, but I'm going to try to explain. This is the fat molecule, and you breathe in oxygen, and there's a chemical process, there's biochemistry that's happening inside your body, and it turns it into carbon dioxide, and water, and energy. A lot of people say you lose it through urination, or you burn it off, right? And that's what they mean by this. But for every 10 kilograms that you lose, you have to breathe in 29 kilograms of oxygen. You have to breathe out 8.4 kilograms of carbon dioxide. And then there's all this water and energy that you're going to use. So now you're breathing out 8.4 kilograms of carbon dioxide. And the recent research from the UN said that 1 million species are going to be extinct. Are you actually contributing to climate change? And the answer is you're not. You're not contributing. So climate change actually comes from fossil fuels, and you won't contribute to it, so no worries, okay? We don't want to hurt the planet while you're losing weight. So what is health? Gideon, does the audio work? We need the speaker. Yeah. Okay. So health is a state of being free from mental and physical illness or injury, and what we want to do is, we said that we want to lose weight because of health, right? So while we're losing weight, we don't want to incur any physical illnesses or injury. But there's 4 things that you need to consider when you're thinking about weight loss. First off, there's activity. Everybody says exercise is good for you, right? So that's one of them. Mindfulness is about meditation, spirituality, and actually resting the body. Nutrition is about the type of food you eat and how much of that food you eat. And sleep is how much rest you get, how much, you know what sleep is. So I'm going to show you a short video on health.
Staying healthy. It can feel complicated. Truth is, making small changes in 4 key areas can make a difference. Just move a little more, eat a little better, sleep tighter, and take a moment to calm your mind. Everything's connected. When you move more, you tend to feel less stressed. If you sleep better, you tend to eat better. One good change leads to another, and another. Pretty soon, healthy decisions start feeling better than unhealthy ones. Check in, see how you're doing, and track your progress over time. When you know your health better, you know yourself better. Simple, really.
So the next thing is let's walk through each one of these four things that we just saw. Exercise. Who here thinks that you can lose weight by exercise? Okay.
We have this idea that if we want to lose weight, we join a gym on January 1st, we start working out regularly, and eventually we slim down. Well, here's some bad news.
I read more than 60 studies on this, and it turns out exercise is actually pretty useless when it comes to weight loss.
Dr. Kevin Hall at the National Institutes of Health has done some of the most important studies on exercise and weight loss.
We need to rebrand exercise. Exercise isn't a weight loss tool per se. It's excellent for health. It's probably the best single thing that you can do other than stopping smoking to improve your health. But don't look at it as a weight loss tool.
Exercise will definitely help you live a longer, happier life. It's just not the best way to lose weight. And the reason it has to do with how our bodies use energy.
You may not realize it, but physical activity is actually a tiny component of your daily energy burn.
There are three main ways our bodies burn calories.
These include your resting metabolism, so that's how much energy your body burns just for its basic functioning, just to keep you alive, basically. The other part of energy expenditure is the thermic effect of food, and that's just how much energy is required to break food down in your body. The third part of energy expenditure is physical activity.
For most people, physical activity, that's any movement you do, only accounts for about 10 to 30% of energy use.
So the vast majority of energy or calories you burn every day comes from your basal or resting metabolism, over which you have very little control.
While 100% of your calories in are up to you, only about 30% of your calories out are in your control. One study found that if a 200-pound man ran for an hour, 4 days a week for a month, he'd lose about 5 pounds at most, assuming everything else stays the same. And everything else doesn't stay the same.
Researchers have found we make all kinds of behavioral and physiological adaptations when we start increasing the amount of exercise we're getting every day.
For one thing, exercise tends to make people hungry.
And I'm sure you know the feeling. You go for a spinning class in the morning, and then by the time you eat breakfast, you're so hungry you maybe double the size of the portion of oatmeal you'd normally eat.
There's also evidence to suggest that some people simply slow down after a workout.
So if you went running in the morning, you might be less inclined to take the stairs at work.
These are called compensatory behaviors. They're basically the various ways we unknowingly undermine our workouts.
Researchers have also discovered a phenomenon called metabolic compensation. As people start to slim down, their resting metabolism can slow down, so the amount of energy you burn while at rest is lower. That means that this bar might shrink as you start to lose weight.
There's still a lot of research to be done, but one study from 2012 is particularly interesting.
They went out into the middle of the savannah in Tanzania to measure the energy burn among a group of hunter-gatherers called the Hadza.
These are super active, lean hunter-gatherers. They're not spending their days behind a computer at a desk.
And what they found was shocking.
What we found is there was no difference at all. So even though the Hadza have a much more physically active lifestyle, they weren't burning any more calories every day than adults in the US and Europe.
Somehow, the energy they used for physical activity was being offset or conserved elsewhere. So how do they stay slim? They don't overeat.
We can undo the calories that we burn off in exercise pretty quickly. It would take about an hour of running to burn off a Big Mac and fries. You'd have to spend about an hour dancing pretty vigorously to burn off 3 glasses of wine you might drink with dinner. An hour of cycling really intensely on exercise bikes to burn off about 2 donuts.
And that's why exercise is best seen as a healthy supplement for a strategy that's focused on it's not impossible to lose weight through exercise, it's just a lot harder. And we need to recognize how that works.
If you do go to the gym, you burn all these calories. It takes you a long time to do so, and you put in a great amount of effort. You can erase all of that in 5 minutes of eating a slice of pizza. The relative magnitude is actually quite surprising, and most people don't fully appreciate that.
Cool. So I know this video is actually against everything that we believe and think about exercise, but it says only if you do exercise, and I'll talk further about that in a few minutes. So I actually intuitively used to think about it as, in my head, I used to think about this as a spiral of exercise. Like when you're obese and you want to lose weight, you're initially very highly motivated, so you sign up for the gym and you start going there. In the first week, you're doing it. You don't even stretch out. You just go at the machine and you're working out. And the initial results, like during the first week, is actually pretty good. So you get you get motivated to continue. But what you see is those behavioral changes that we talked about earlier, where you start eating more than you used to, and you're actually gaining muscle when you're working out. So in the end, your weight actually goes up a few kilograms. And now, because you have not been stretching out before and after you're doing exercise, especially if you're obese, you can't do the stretches the right way. So the muscles, and you're having a lot of physiological pain that you're carrying with you during these exercises. So now all this pain and the weight gain actually leads to less motivation to continue working out. So you stop exercising, and because exercise actually increases human growth hormones inside our body, what that means is they're going to require more food, and you're going to eventually gain more weight than when you started. So another way to lose weight is through nutrition. Now, nutrition, as I said earlier, was focused on primarily the type of food you eat and how much of that food you eat. Now, there's two things in nutrition that you need to be concerned about. It's calorie restriction. You probably know this. They're commonly known as diets, and fasting. Fasting is also popular. Calorie restriction is about watching which types of food you eat and how much of that food you eat. Fasting is actually eliminating a certain type of food or completely stopping food altogether. Okay?
Breakfast of Champions.
What's the difference between eating less food and eating no food? Well, let's look at two different situations. In 1944, a study called the Minnesota Starvation Experiment was conducted and was designed to understand the effects of caloric restriction on the body in order to gain some knowledge that would help people starving in the aftermath of World War II. 36 healthy men with an average height of 178 centimeters, about 5'10", and an average weight of 69.3 kilograms or 153 pounds were selected. For 3 months, they ate a diet of 3,200 calories per day. Then, for 6 months, they ate only 1,570 calories. However, caloric intake was adjusted to attempt to have the men lose 1.1 kilograms per week, meaning some men got less than 1,000 calories per day. The foods given were high in carbohydrates, things like potatoes, turnips, bread, and macaroni. Meat and dairy products were rarely given. During the 6 months, the men experienced profound physical and psychological changes. Everyone complained that they were too cold. One subject talked about having to wear a sweater in July on a sunny day. The subject's body temperatures dropped to an average of 95.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Physical endurance dropped by half, and strength showed a 21% decrease. The men experienced a complete lack of interest in everything except for food, which they were obsessed with. They were plagued with constant and intense hunger. There were several cases of neurotic behavior like hoarding cookbooks and utensils. 2 participants had to be cut from the experiment because they admitted to stealing and eating several raw turnips and taking scraps of food from garbage cans. At first, the participants were allowed to chew gum, until some of the men began chewing up to 40 packages a day. Now, compare all this to the case of Angus Barbieri, a Scottish man who in 1965 fasted for over 380 days straight. That is, he took in no food whatsoever, nothing but water, black coffee, and straight tea for just over a year. He lost 276 pounds, going from 456 pounds to 180. A case report published by the Dundee University Department of Medicine in 1973 said, "The patient remained symptom-free, felt well, and walked about normally." And prolonged fasting in this patient had no ill effects. There were no complaints of mind-numbing hunger, and he kept the weight off. For several years, his weight stayed around 196 pounds. This, of course, is not a perfect comparison. With the case of Angus, there's only one subject, and his starting weight was drastically higher compared to those in the Minnesota experiment. However, it does illustrate some very interesting points about just how different of a physiological response you can get from fasting, that is, eating nothing, compared to eating less, or caloric restriction.
Yeah, so that video was talking about comparing calorie restriction and versus fasting. Now there's another term called starvation, and you might have heard of it. Starvation is not fasting, okay? Starvation is actually a medical term, which means when your body does not have enough energy to survive, it actually shuts down metabolism and your internal organs stop working individually, right? You do not want to starve, okay? We're gonna talk about calorie restriction. In his book, The Obesity Code, Jason Fung compared fasting to calorie restriction, and he found that people who used calorie restriction lost less weight, had more muscle loss, which we said we did not want to do, and felt more hungry than the people that were fasting. Now, fasting has been a part of life for thousands of years. It's in religion, it's in culture and philosophy. In religion, it's actually used as a tool to for the mortification of your flesh, or increasing or depriving yourselves from your desires, so that you have better control of your mind. And in culture, Mahatma Gandhi actually fasted as a method of protest. And Hippocrates, he was a Greek physician. He is known as the father of medicine, and he said that before you heal someone, you should ask them whether they're willing to give up the things that made them sick. So all throughout history, fasting has been a part of life. Now, when we talk about fasts, there's three. The current popular ones are keto diet, intermittent fasting, and juice fasts. Like if you've seen keto diets, it's primarily decreasing your carbohydrate intake, which is plants and vegetables, and fruits and vegetables, and increasing the amount of protein and fat that you consume. I would not recommend this to you, because eating a lot of protein and fat is actually going to be expensive for you, because meat is expensive, right? But also, what are the long-term effects of eating fat? When I mean fat, I mean like butter, cream, things like that. Consuming a lot of that, what do you think those long-term effects are? But people have shown that they have lost weight on keto diets. Another one is intermittent fasting. And this one is basically what's been done by religions for thousands of years. So you either stop eating for 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, or even a couple of days, and you could completely stop eating. The third one is a juice fast, right? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. The person, Joe Cross, has a documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. That one was the reason I started juicing, and I started going into it. So what is juicing? Juicing basically is extracting the nutrients from fruits and vegetables and leaving out the fiber or the solid parts of the food. So we'll look into it more, but that's the third option that we're going to look at. Now, all three of these have something in common. They're all about getting to this state called ketosis, okay? And there's a lot of rage on the internet about ketosis. Ketosis, well, the technical term is the increased levels in the blood of ketone bodies formed from the liver. Glycogen stores are depleted. What it basically means is when you run out of sugar, your liver uses something called ketogenesis, which turns fat molecules into energy, okay? So that's what you want to do. And what's produced is ketone as a byproduct, which you get rid of through urination, through sweat, etc. Okay. How do you know whether you've reached ketosis? Well, there's several ways, but one of them is using ketone test strips. I was not able to find one in Kigali. The other option is to go to your doctor and ask for a blood test and see how much ketones are in your blood. So one of the questions is, won't you get hungry? If you're fasting for long periods of time, won't you get hungry? And the answer is, well, not really the answer, but in a book in 1911, Upton Sinclair was experimenting with fasting and for long periods of time. And he said, I was very hungry for the first day. The unwholesome, ravening sort of hunger that we all know. I had a little hunger the second morning, and thereafter, to my very astonishment, no hunger whatsoever. No more interest in food than if I had never known the taste of it. I actually experienced the same thing, but for me, it was about the fourth and fifth day. The first week is actually your body's going through some changes. You're going to feel tired. You're going to feel disinterested. You don't want to basically talk to people. Well, that's one of the symptoms. What you want to do is, if you're going to start your fast, start it on a Wednesday, okay? Because by the third day is Friday, and you have the weekend, right? You're not going to see that many people, so you're going to feel tired. Your reactions are different for different people, so yeah, so you can do that. So all the trouble that goes into it goes in the first few days. Now, there's also research about how do you get hungry, and it's because of a chemical known as ghrelin that's inside your body. And they did this research with 75 participants and they were fasting for 33 hours. And as you can see, this is the wave of ghrelin inside their body, and it was measured every 20 minutes. Okay, and what you see is that at 9 a.m. The ghrelin levels in their body are very low, which means they're not as hungry. But as the day progresses, during lunch, dinner, and breakfast, those ghrelin levels increase, right? So that's when you start to feel hunger. And you also notice that maybe you've experienced this, like you're working on something and you forgot to eat lunch, right? You couldn't eat lunch, and after a while, spontaneously the hunger goes away. Like you don't feel hungry anymore, right? You can see in this graph, like the ghrelin levels start to slow down and your hunger goes away. There was another research, and this one was for a much longer period of time. It was about 3 days, and they were checking whether people actually felt hungry when it was more than a day. And what they found was, and these are the results, that the ghrelin level actually decreased as you went further along in your fast. So the first one shows women against men. The A and C compares women against men and their levels of ghrelin in their body. And the second one compares obese versus lean. And you can see from all four that everybody feels less and less hungry with time.
When you think about it, there's really only 3 things we can eat: plants, animals, and processed food. But for most of our history, we've only had 2 of those: plants and animals. Processed foods have really only come along in the last 70 years. Think of hunger this way. When your cells need supplies, they pick up the phone and call room service. A message is sent to the brain saying, "Joe, we're hungry. Send food and send it now." For most of our history, that meant either animals or plants, but mostly plants. These days, most of us have replaced those plants with the new kid on the block: processed food. As a result of this, our cells are missing out on vital nutrients, and they're not happy. They didn't get what they needed or ordered. So, you'll get hungry again, and quickly. Without these nutrients, those cells function less efficiently. So the problem isn't just what we're eating is making us sick. It's that we're not eating enough of what keeps us well. And that is why what you eat, combined with other lifestyle choices, plays such a huge role in determining your overall health.
Okay. So what does the juice fast actually look like? Juice fast is about cutting out solid foods entirely. It's about focusing on the liquid part, or extracting those nutrients, right? So you shouldn't use any processed sugars, and it's recommended to use 80% vegetables and 20% juice. That should be fruits. Sorry. So what are the benefits of doing a juice fast? One of the things you'll notice is that in the first week, you'd see significant changes, better than that you'd see when you're exercising. You'll see increases in energy. It's actually been a month since I stopped doing the juice fast, and what I've seen is, like, when I was doing it, I had a ton of more energy in my body, and I was able to accomplish more. And I had better concentration. So when you have energy and you have better concentration, one of the results you get is you're gaining more time because you're being more productive, right? But other than that, you're also not eating. Eating takes a certain period of time. Preparing the food takes a certain period of time. So you're cutting out all of that. And usually making a juice takes about 10 minutes, right? And you could make some for the whole day. And you actually gain a lot of time. And you also sleep better. That's definitely one of the things I saw. I used to wake up at 4 a.m. because I'm done with my sleep. I had enough energy. And yeah, when I said sleep, you're also not wasting energy on digestion, so you're reserving that energy in your cuisine. And another thing is reduced internal inflammation. If you have those problems, you would actually benefit from it as well, and you get clearer skin. Yeah, and compared to calorie restriction, you feel less hungry. So now let's go back to exercise. The earlier video was about if you do exercise alone, you won't have that many changes. But this one is about, can you do exercises while you're fasting? I was afraid to do so until I saw this video.
So I recently had a question, should I work out when I'm fasting? So let's talk about that. So many people have this idea they have to eat before they exercise to get energy for whatever reason. So let's first talk about the 3 or 4 variables to exercise. You have the type of exercise, you have the intensity of the exercise, how hard did you go, and then the duration, how long you go, and then you have the recovery. So the purpose of exercise is to make you more fit, to increase the health of the system, to build more capacity, more fitness, to actually have less stress. There's many benefits of exercise, but those are some of them. So what you're doing is you're stressing your body, and then your body's going to adapt to that and improve various things. You have to be careful not to overtrain, because overtraining will inhibit your sleep, keep your inflammation up, and reduce your gains. So it's always kind of an adjustment of figuring out what your optimum amount of intensity, duration, and recovery is. Now, when you fast, you get this massive additional increase of growth hormone. Now think about it. Exercise triggers growth hormone, and fasting increases growth hormone. So when you combine them, you get a huge effect of growth hormone. And what's really cool about fasting is you get amazing reparative actions. You have this huge spike in repair in general. So it's going to actually come in handy when your body's trying to repair from the stress. So the body can actually get new capillaries, mitochondria, repair the cell structures more efficiently. When you work out during a fasting mode, you can enhance fat burning by 20 to 30% more. And also you improve insulin resistance. Now, as far as the type of exercise, this really depends on your recovery. So if your recovery is poor, you do aerobic exercise, low intensity, walking, something real light, and then you build up to more anabolic, which is more like high intensity interval training would be very good. Compound resistance exercise, using as many muscles as possible when you're working out. High intensity, that would be very beneficial to maximize your growth hormone. So in summary, absolutely yes, you want to strive to exercise when you're fasting because there are so many benefits, mainly for the reparative actions. Thanks for watching.
So he did mention high intensity interval training, and by day 30 I started Insanity, which is one example of those, and it's actually pretty good because it instructs you on how to do the right types of stretches before and after you work out, and it's actually for short durations, right? You don't work out for longer than 30 minutes, so it's actually very good for you. Actually, a lot of gym instructors use these videos for their training as well. So stretching, I've stressed over stretching over and over again, but it's essential if you want to avoid injury and if you want to be more flexible. The more flexible you are, the better you do the exercises, and the better you feel. So it's pretty good for you. Yeah, should start. So you want to start juicing. You're excited about it. And how do you actually juice? Well, there's two types of machines that you can use for juicing. There's a blender and a juicer. The difference is a blender blends everything together. It emulsifies or chops down everything into very small particles, right? And it uses blades like this. So what happens is heat is created, and it turns into a liquid, but it's not the right type of liquid because it has those high fibers inside of it. But you can still use it for juicing. If you have a strainer, you can pour the juice over a strainer. There are some arguments about some of the nutrients being lost through heat, but it's not always the case. Now, the best tool that you can use is actually a juicer itself. A juicer has two things. It has one part for actually collecting the juice, and another part behind where it extracts the fiber or the solid particles of the fruits and vegetables that you use. That one, I'm going to show you different varieties of juicers. So there's different varieties in the market. I definitely recommend the centrifugal juicer. That one is the best. It takes the least amount of time. It's comparatively affordable and doesn't make a lot of noise. Much better. But there are other types. This one is the most efficient one that you can use. This one and the press juicer is the most efficient one. Press juicers are really expensive, so you don't want to get started with that. This one and this one are basically the same, except that this one has two gears and that one has one. Do not ever buy the masticating juicer. It doesn't have a lot of use except for ice creams. Okay. So you want to buy one in Kigali. Here are some examples. The prices range from $50 to $160. Okay. And this ones you can find at Simba, and you can also find at T2000 to Tedamil, and yeah, there's different sizes. One thing I'd ask you to avoid is the juice blender combo. Those things tend to break down. The one I used was this one. I used this 60 days straight. I was using it every day, 3 times a day, and it kept working, right? And the best thing about this one is it's 800 watts. So it has a lot of energy. So it can chop off even green vegetables such as lettuce and spinach and things like that. So the higher the wattage, the better for you. If you have something like 300 watts, do not buy it. If you're thinking, how do I finance myself? These things are pretty expensive. Well, there's 2 things you need to look at. First off, if you don't buy these machines now, you're going to end up paying for it in medical fees, right? Eventually, you're going to pay for it. So, and that fee is going to be 10 times more expensive than than what you pay here. Secondly, in my case, I went into a bet that I could lose 10 kilograms, and that bet was for $200, and I actually won that bet, so I was able to get this thing for free. So I suggest that you do a similar trick, except for the people in this room who already know, so everybody's going to be betting. Well, technically, now that you know, you can actually bet with the people here about who'd lose the most weight, right? So there are some dangers to ketosis. There are 3 things that I want you to remember. If you're doing ketosis and you have type 1 diabetics, do not even try it. Don't try it. It's very dangerous. It could kill you. Second thing, avoid heavy machinery for the first week. Don't drive. Don't do anything that's that's too big, because you feel tired, you feel fainty. And the third one is don't break the fast abruptly. This one is very common. After I started the fast, 3 other people joined me on the fast. Like they also started, and 2 people were unable to complete their fast because of temptations, and it usually happens around the 2nd week. I had the same problem. I had a watermelon during the 2nd week, and it actually, and if you can see the graph that I showed you earlier where I was losing weight, when I did that, the weight stopped going down for a while. So try not to do it. It actually could make you sick. Like it could have effects on your digestive process. So how do you end the fast? You've not been eating for 60 days. What do you eat? Well, you should avoid meat, dairy, and other fats. You don't want to do that right after 60 days of not eating. It's dangerous. What you want to focus on is eating fruits and vegetables. And you want to have fruits that are low in citrus, like you don't want to eat an orange, and low in fiber. So an example would be watermelons when you're done fasting. And gradually increase the amounts of food. You can't eat the same level of, like a single apple could fill you up for a whole day after the fast. So yeah, and chew more while you're eating. That decreases the protein intake. Is there's a lot of people who ask, where do you get protein? People fear that you don't have protein. Well, one way to do it is through protein shakes. These are meal replacement chemicals that you can use in your drinks. I highly don't suggest them because you're putting chemicals in your body which you don't need. There has not been a recorded instance of somebody being ill because they did not have enough protein. So it's something that rarely happens. If you think about it, how do vegans stay alive if they don't eat protein, right? So, well, there's something called autophagy where what happens is your cells, because they can't find protein, they start using up dead cells inside your body. And that actually helps you, when I mentioned clearing up your skin, that's what it does. It clears up the dead cells on your skin. And in some cases, it's actually been proven that fasting helps with cancer because it eats up dead cancer cells. Yeah, so when you're done fasting, what do you want to do? You don't want to continue eating what you were eating before because you're going to gain the weight back. And a lot of research has shown that if you continue eating the same things, you're going to gain the weight back in about 3 months. So you don't want to go back. So what should you eat? This research showed a plant-based, high carbohydrate, low fat diet actually helped people lose 6 kilograms over 16 weeks. So 16 weeks is 4 months. Over 4 months, they lost 6 kilos. But you can see that it's a healthier option than eating what you were eating before. Another way to do it is not to focus on in what you eat, but how you eat. And one of the things is, this book is pretty good. It's 45 pages, so it's a very short book. But one of the tips it gives is, like, you shouldn't eat until you're full. you should only eat until 80%. Now it's very hard to guess when you're done eating 80% of your food, but over time you start to notice when you have eaten, you have eaten enough. And chew more, don't eat between meals. So this is the last video. And this one is about how mindfulness, meditation, spirituality, resting actually is connected with your overall health and your weight loss.
And I'm more firmly convinced every week that goes by that the ultimate cause of disease is stress.
90% of what takes people to the doctor is stress-related illnesses. They leave with antidepressants. They leave with every kind of medication.
We have three basic stresses. We have physical stress like accidents, injuries, falls, traumas. We have chemical stress like bacteria and viruses and hormones and foods and heavy metals and hangovers and blood sugar levels. And then we have emotional stress, and that's family tragedies, loss, job, finances. And all of those things knock our brain and body out of balance.
When you perceive a threat, in the old days in school, we referred to that as activating the adrenal system, fight or flight. If you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, how much energy do you want to make available to run away from that tiger? I hope you get the answer, and the answer is, I want 100% of the energy to run away from the tiger.
Centuries, thousands of years ago, that was maybe appropriate because there was literally a potentially life-threatening situation with a wild animal, let's say. But now it's your spouse, or it's your boss, or it's rent that's due in a week. And yet the system reacts in the same way as though it's a life-threatening situation, so you're still releasing cortisol, you're still releasing adrenaline, noradrenaline into the system.
And
back in 1968, I was learning how to clone stem cells. And back at that time, just a handful of people in the entire world even knew what a stem cell was. So I was in the right place at the right time to make some interesting discoveries. I put one stem cell in culture by itself. It divides every 10 or 12 hours. At first there's 1, then 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, doubling. So I have 50,000 genetically identical cells. That's not the experiment. This is. I split the cells into 3 different petri dishes. And what I do is I change the chemical composition of the culture medium. Culture medium is the equivalent of blood. So if I'm growing mouse cells, then what I do is look at mouse blood, see what it's made out of, and then try to make a synthetic version of that called culture medium. So here's the point. Genetically identical cells in 3 dishes, but slightly different environment because of the chemistry. In one dish, the cells form muscle. In a second dish, the cells form bone. And in a third dish, the cells form fat cells. Significance? What controls the fate of the cells? Point? They were all genetically identical. The environment is what was selecting the genetic activity of the cells.
Yeah, so this video is basically showing you that when the environment around you and your internal environment, that is with meditation, spirituality, etc., actually changes the type of cells that are produced in your body. It could be fat, muscle, or bones. And there's actually research about, the correlation between sleep and weight loss, and you can read about it. But the results were basically when you don't get enough sleep, you have increased levels of ghrelin, which means you're more hungry. You have increased hunger and appetite. And recent research has shown that confirmed previous findings of an association between sleep loss and increased risk of obesity. Finally, the summary, you want to make health a priority. You want to lose weight because you want to gain better health. You want to, the whole talk was centered around the idea of considering fasting for weight loss. And even if you don't want to incorporate fasting, you should start adding juice into your daily diet, and that will increase your concentration and your energy. Finally, activity, nutrition, meditation or mindfulness and sleep are all connected. So when you're thinking about weight loss, don't think about one single thing. Consider all 4 things at once. And when you make changes to those, you're likely to get that weight loss that you want. Finally, you've seen the presentation. I want some feedback on this presentation and what you liked, or if you think that I should make changes to it, if it's too long, etc. on the email. Thank you.